Hello, it's Andy Graham of Hobo Traveler. This is the Ask Andy Show. I'm in Vilcabamba, Ecuador, and I have a website also called My Vilcabamba. Okay, Kaylyn D. asked a question. Okay, dear Andy, are you really strict with this 3-month limit you have for staying in a country? What if you feel like staying longer? Is it legally necessary to get out in 3 months, or is this a self-imposed rule? I have been out of the U.S. I have not been out of the USA yet, and don't really know these things. And yes, it's kind of funny. Yes, Andy, I am too lazy to read right now. Sincerely, Kaylyn. Okay, Kaylyn. I have a 3-month travel rule. Inside a bunch of travelers. I mean, all travelers that travel for a long time kind of set up their kind of rules on like when it's time to go. Normally, the truth is, the time to go for most places for me is when I'm tired of taking photos of the place, because I just nothing left for me to take photos of, which means I've pretty much investigated the whole place. But the 3-month rule has nothing to do with countries; it has to do with cities. And so I could be, I've been in Thailand probably a year of my life. I've been in Guatemala probably a year of my life. Togo a year of my life. And even Ecuador. I was in Ecuador maybe, golly, 10, 12 years ago. Many times. But I would leave Ecuador, go to Colombia, leave Ecuador, go to Peru, come back. We went all over the place. I even went, all the way up to the Amazon and came back. And so the 3-month rule is generally a rule, I said, because I was tired of people saying that they traveled. There's people that will say there's got to be a limit. If you're going to travel and be a perpetual traveler, you can't just, it's like people will say they're in Korea and they'll work there for a year and they'll say they're traveling. Well, they're not traveling, they're working. So I've just kind of came up with an arbitrary rule as one of the longest term backpackers on the planet, that if you're living in the same hotel, the same place for over 3 months, you're living there. I'm not strict about it. I mean, it's the intention. But the idea is that to try, if you're going to start counting that you're continuously traveling and you're a perpetual traveler, there's got to be a limit here, right? There's got to be some. And if anybody, I wrote the Guinness Book of World Records saying that I was the world's longest perpetual traveler. And they said that I had to move like every 10 days. And I said, anybody that moves every 10 days would go insane, and they should. Okay. I have realized that maybe some rock groups, like the Rolling Stones, might move hotels every 3 months for longer than me. And there's some major rock groups that live in hotels, all over the planet. They might have continually moved and never stayed in one place longer than 3 months. It's just a thing. But I mean, there's a lot of military guys that could be considered to travel around the planet on different bases, but they change bases every 3 or 4 years and have been outside the United States for longer than maybe 20 years, 30 years. Of course, some of the embassy people. But I just found that a lot of people would say, I had one guy said, "Oh, I've been traveling for 30 years." And no, he every year he went traveling one time for 2 or 3 weeks. That is not doing what I'm doing. I don't have a home. The earmark of a traveler is a person that doesn't have a home just because it just has no value. I don't have a home. I don't have a house. I don't rent a house. But I rented a place in Togo, but I was just going to, it was so cheap that for a year that it was less than what I'll pay here for 2 months, right? But it has nothing to do with, it's just kind of saying, are you a traveler? If you're going to ask the question, are you a traveler? A traveler is the one that just can't basically stand to stay in a place longer than 3 months. And we have to move. But generally, if you're staying in the same metropolitan area more than 3 months, you're starting to live there. I do know that in most countries will force you to move normally around 3 months. I mean, 30 days to 3 months is pretty typical. And that's the visa time they give it. I am really concerned about Ecuador. They really put people between a rock and a hard place here, because it really looks like you have to leave the country. I mean, some of these countries are doing this. Thailand's kind of doing this. They're forcing you into a rock and a hard place. And I really just want you guys to realize that you shouldn't just get a visa. I mean, to get a visa without having lived a visa and paying and staying for, you know, like a long-term visa, which says that you can get residency there and all that stuff, you shouldn't do that until really you're in the country for at least 2 years. I mean, this is just asinine, because it just locks you in, and it just, you know, self-imposed misery in a way. I mean, because some of these guys, like guys here, are putting $25,000 in a bank and getting 10% interest. That's nice. But, you know, they basically burned all their bridges. And, you know, Ecuador is really putting you between a rock and a hard place here, because they'll give you a 3-month visa, and then you can leave, I guess, go to Peru, apply and get a 6-month visa, but then you can't come back in the country for, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. I haven't really understood it. It just makes no sense. But what it tells me is that either they're going for the close, they're forcing you to get a long-term visa. And I truly believe that you should just leave and go to another country and forget about it for a couple years until you really make up your, you know, really do it. Because the truth is, you really don't. I mean, I just heard a guy ranting the other day. He's been here for about a year. He bought a house, he's hooked into the place, and he really is not very happy, okay? And you don't really know if you like a place until about, you probably lived on the ground in the country for 2 years. Then you can start making these long-term decisions. But this has nothing to do with you, Kaylyn. It's just saying that if you're going to call yourself a traveler, and you're going to say, which is, there's some of us that take pride in the fact that we're travelers. And it's really not that we're taking pride, it's that we're addicted to traveling. And the idea of sitting in one place for longer than 3 months is a little bit, you know, onerous for us. We really feel pain because it's boring. We just get bored after a while, and we sit there and say, well, it's not that we get bored, we need that rush, okay? Okay, but that's the question. But it was just, I had people, I know a few travelers that are kept, you know, saying they traveled. It's like the first time, they go back to the first time they traveled when they're age 16 or something, and then 15 or something. Like, I went to, when I was 16, I went on a trip, drove my car all by myself to New Mexico and went backpacking. So I could say I've been traveling for what? I don't know, 40 years? But, you know, it's silly. But the time that you take traveling and the time that you stay in one location, what travel is that what makes travel is the fact that you're always uncomfortable. If you're saying you're really comfortable, you're not traveling, okay? If your hotel and room and everything's been adjusted and you're really super happy, you're not traveling. Travel is uncomfortable. So I've been basically uncomfortable for 16 plus years. But it's my normal status of being in a little bit of chaos. But I have a high level of discomfort, okay? I mean, I really live much better than almost anybody around me, just because I know, like, my room here has got a light outside the window and outside this window, so I have something to cover up the window to make the curtains work, because there's a light shining into my room from both windows, and it's really difficult to sleep with this light. So I know how to, you know, I had some clothespins and safety pins, and I hung up something over it. Seems really simple, but people don't realize how uncomfortable. You know, I'm instantly adept at seeing the discomforts in a room that sort of wear on you after a while. But I can walk into any hotel and just make it comfortable. I have a reading light in here. There's no reading light. There's a whole bunch of problems with the hotel. But it's a pretty good hotel. I mean, for the price. I mean, I'm paying $12, but it's really, you know, just an average hotel. But, you know, and everybody loves to garden here, but a lot of mosquitoes, guys. Okay. Okay, Andy Graham in Vilcabamba, Ecuador. We can